If you're not where you want to be in life, it's most likely not because you aren't capable of getting there, but it's because your inner critic keeps you convincing you that you are not. You know that little voice in your head that always seems to have something negative to say about you? The one that tells you you're not good enough, or you're not ready yet. The one that whispers, you'll probably mess this up too. Or it's not the perfect time. Maybe it's already too late. Or other people are way better than you. Or you'll never catch up. Sometimes it tricks you into believing that you need to work harder than everyone else just to deserve a place at the table. And these are just some of the most common thoughts that tend to play in our heads every day. At least these are the ones that I hear most often. But depending on your life and your experiences, your inner monologue might sound a little different. But the point is that no matter what your inner critic tells you, after hitting that thing for a long time, day after day, you start to believe it. You start holding yourself back. Not because you aren't capable, but because that voice convinced you that you aren't. And I know that sometimes you just want to turn it down and stop it from controlling your mind. That used to be my way of dealing with it. I will try to block it out completely. But here is what I've learned. And it's something I first came across in the Big Life Journal for Adults, in the chapter on building a self-compassionate mindset. And something I've also noticed in my own life. And is that our inner critic doesn't just disappear because we want it to. Whether we like it or not, it will always be there. And unfortunately, the more we fight it, the louder it usually gets. As Dr. Kristin Neff, an expert on self-compassion, explained, when you try to criticize your inner critic or you tell it to shut up, your stress levels actually go up. And your body gets flooded with cortisol, that stress hormone. And before you know it, you feel drained, unfocused, and even overwhelmed. So instead of trying to fight it or push it away, there is a much, much better and far more effective way to work with it. A way that not only reduces stress and anxiety, but also helps you build a peaceful and supportive relationship with your inner critic. So the first step is to understand that our inner critic is actually trying to protect us. Yes, I know, that can be hard to believe, considering how many harsh words it throws at us sometimes. But it's true. Our inner critic is really that part of us that is scared and cautious and doesn't want us to get hurt, to fail, or be judged. In other words, our inner critic actually has good intentions, but it expresses them in the wrong way, by criticizing us instead of guiding us. And that's the real problem. It's like someone who cares about you but doesn't know how to show it. So instead of encouraging you, they end up hurting you. But here's what we can do. We can change the way we respond to it. And you probably know that famous quote that says, it's not what happens to us that matters, but how we respond to it. And that's exactly what I've been learning to do with my own inner critic. Instead of treating it like my enemy, I've been practicing listening to it, trying to understand its fears, and then responding with kindness and compassion. In other words, I learned to befriend it. And you can learn this too. So let me show a few simple steps you can start using today to befriend your inner critic and take control of your life. These are the things I've been practicing, I think, more than 2 years now. And as I've noticed, they've helped me turn that harsh voice into more of a quiet guide that doesn't hold me back anymore, but actually supports me. So the first practical step is to simply notice that voice when it shows up. Don't judge it. Don't fight it. Just acknowledge it. For example, if you catch yourself thinking, I'm worthless, instead of listening to that thought, you can pause and say, my inner critic is telling me I'm worthless. See the difference? By naming it for what it is, you create a little bit of distance between you and that voice. And in that moment, you get to choose how to respond instead of letting that inner critic take over. It's like being caught in a storm. When you're in it, you get soaked and overwhelmed. But if you step back and watch it from the inside through the window, you can see what's happening without getting pulled into it. And that's what noticing your inner critic does. It puts you safely behind the glass instead of getting stuck in the storm. Now that we are safely behind the glass, the next thing we need to do is to get curious about what this inner critic is actually trying to protect us from. Like I mentioned earlier, our inner critic really cares about us. It just doesn't know how to show it. So instead of getting mad at it or trying to push it away, I usually ask myself, okay, what are you worried about? What are you trying to keep me away from? So it's really about trying to figure out what's hiding behind that nagging voice. And I know it takes a little mental work, but once you start doing it, something interesting happens. That voice in your head starts to feel less like an enemy and more like a nervous friend that's trying to look out for you. You start to notice that underneath that criticism is actually fear. For example, if your inner critic says you are not good enough, maybe it's just trying to protect you from failing or being judged. If it says you are not ready yet, maybe it's just afraid of you stepping out there and making a mistake. When it whispers, other people are way better than you, underneath that, it could be a fear of not measuring up or of being left behind. And maybe when it says, who do you think you are? That one usually comes from a fear of rejection. Like you don't belong or you won't be accepted. So the point is that the words your inner critic usually tells you can sound harsh, but underneath, it's almost always fear. And when you start to see that, it changes how you relate to that voice. It doesn't feel like a bully anymore. It feels like a scared part of you that just doesn't know how to say, I want you to be safe. I remember a few years ago when I joined the community of entrepreneurs led by Evan Carmichael. And he was always encouraging us to show up and share our stories. And of course, his big push was to start a YouTube channel. And deep down, I wanted that too. But every time I thought about it, my inner critic will stop me. It kept saying, "You are not ready. You don't know enough. You don't have the time." And because I was studying for my business degree back then, that voice felt pretty convincing. It made me believe I had to wait until I had more knowledge, more experience, more time, more resources, basically more of everything. But eventually, I realized it wasn't really about being ready. It was just fear. Fear of failing, fear of being judged, fear of trying something new and putting myself out there, fear of feeling vulnerable. And once I saw that, once I saw the real reason behind it, I didn't let that voice control me anymore. I acknowledge it, and I choose to move forward anyway. Step by step, little by little, I started showing up, even while that voice was still there. And in this case, in this example, it worked perfectly. However, there might be situations when, even if you know what your inner critic is worried about, you might still not be able to ignore it, as it might get louder and louder. And when this happens, you might want to respond with kindness and compassion. And I know, that probably sounds a little weird at first, like why I would want to be kind to the voice that's been tearing me down. But here is the thing. If you respond to harshness with more harshness, it just becomes a battle in your head. And that never ends well. Instead, what actually works is treating that voice the way you will treat a scared friend. You wouldn't yell at your friend for being afraid, right? You'd probably say something like, "Hey, I get it. I know you're scared, but I've got this." So the next time your inner critic tells you you're not good enough, instead of fighting it back, you could say, "Thanks for looking out for me, but I'm going to try it anyway." Or if it says you're not ready, you could respond with, "I might not have it all figured out, but I don't need to be perfect to start." And that small shift changes everything. Because suddenly, your inner critic stops being the driver. It becomes more like a nervous passenger. You might still talk, but you are the one holding the wheel. And that's exactly what we need. So, here you have it, my friend. The 3 simple steps to befriend your inner critic. First, notice the voice. Second, get curious about what it's really afraid of. And third, respond with kindness and compassion. And when you practice this, your inner critic no longer has the power to hold you back. It becomes something you can hear, but not follow. And that's how you find the courage to finally move forward, to step into the life you want, even if the voice is still there. Because the truth is, you are capable. You always were. And the voice inside your head was never your enemy. It was only fear, asking to be understood. And once you do that, you realize you don't have to wait until the voice disappears. You can start now. You can move forward with fear in the passenger seat while you keep your hands firmly on the wheel. That's how real progress is made. Not by silencing the inner critic, but by choosing to lead anyway.